Hey, welcome back. This is Father Andrew, and you're riding along with the rector. And we're looking at the early pieces of Holy Scripture. We looked at how God precedes creation, how he goes through his creative process, and he not only does the physical work of creation, but starts to create our moral categories, right? Like light, good, dark is the absence of light, the absence of good. And when God creates man in chapter 2, he puts man into a garden with a tree that gives eternal life and a tree that gives godlike knowledge and control over life and death. They call it the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You have two trees. And man is brought from the wilderness into the garden, and he will tend the garden alongside God. So man is in God's presence in this state. He is working alongside God in this state. And his food, which is provided by a tree from God, gives him everlasting life. And he can eat in obedience, but there is also the potential to eat in rebellion. That is, to forsake the good tree and go to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And God says, in the day that you eat of it, you will surely die. All right. Sets the stage. In comes the serpent. The serpent tempts Eve and says, did God really say? Eve wasn't present. So everything she knows had to have been communicated to her either by God or the man. But she kind of gets a little extra biblical and says, oh, we can't eat that fruit. We can't even touch it. We can't even touch it. That's a little bit extra biblical. Is there significance to that? I don't know. A lot of commentary to be read there. But the serpent laughs and says, you won't surely die. God just doesn't want any competition. If you eat it, you'll become like him, and then he'll have to share his glory. And so the woman, seeing that the fruit is good to eat, eats it, and now has the quote unquote knowledge or control over good and evil, and has taken on a godlike role. But there's only one God. All the other gods are pretender gods. Therefore, if a woman is in this role, God warns, you will surely die. Now, she doesn't drop dead. She eats the fruit. The man eats the fruit, and they start to feel shame. The knowledge of good and evil gives them the knowledge of shame, and they realize they're not wearing any clothes, and they are shamed and scared to be seen in their nakedness, and so they start to cover up. And God comes and starts to interact with them. In the cool of the day, they heard God in and amongst the garden. Remember that in this garden, they have full access to God and his character. It is a heavenly state to be in God's presence and all of his goodness, and to experience his goodness and everlasting life is a heavenly state. And they are sitting in heaven, but now they feel shame and distance from God. They are beginning to experience the death that God promised, the death of relationship, the breakdown of their bodies, shame. Death is starting to enter into the picture. And that, like God, they're designed to live forever. So, of course, God interacts with them and says, did you eat the fruit from the tree I told you not to eat? They start playing the blame game. God curses the serpent. God tells the woman that because of this, her interactions with her husband will be strained, and childbirth will become dangerous and hard. God tells the woman, or it tells the man, that your work will become toilsome. The work you do will create enough food, but it'll be hard now. It'll be by the sweat of your brow. There'll be weeds. There'll be thistles. It won't be like this garden where it's nice and easy. Its work will become toilsome, and they are ejected from the garden. Because if they live forever in this state, that means they live forever in the state of spiritual death, in a state of rejection from God. And so God does a couple things. He gets them out of his presence so that their lack of holiness would not be destroyed by his entire holiness. And he clothes them. He sacrifices an animal and takes the skins and clothes them. And we see the beginnings of the sacrificial system where God covers the nakedness and the shame by the killing of an animal. This act will be fulfilled in the destruction of Jesus Christ, who will cover over our shame and clothe us in his righteousness forever. We are seeing a foretaste of the cross in what has happened here, which I think is pretty stinking cool. It is tragic because now mankind and God are separated from one another. Mankind cannot re-enter into the temple that is the garden. It's protected by sword-bearing angelic beings. And so we are now in this place where God and man are separated from one another. And the rest of the Bible is going to be how God is going to bring about a reunion to that through the work of his son, Jesus Christ. The rest of the Bible is about Jesus doing what Adam and Eve could not do. Well, I hope you'll stick with us.